Hello, guys, and welcome into the NW Sportscast. Levi, breaking news. Scott Service is fired. Initial reactions. What do you got for us? You immediately texted the group chat. Actually, I believe it was your dad that texted the group chat. And your initial reaction, what I heard was that it needs to be done. Is that true?
Yeah, yeah, it needed to be done. The team has been spiraling. It's been spiraling, and action has to be taken. This is a last ditch effort for the team, but also for Jerry Dipoto because he does not have a contract extension. If the team does not make the playoffs, Dipoto is not coming back. He knows that. He's trying to send a message, a scapegoat that it was not his fault, it was Scott's fault. And now he's hired Dan Wilson for 36 games. The Mariners have 36 games with Dan Wilson as head coach. If they do well in those 36 games, it could save this franchise potentially.
Yeah, it
The
really
current way, the current state of it.
it could. Yeah, Levi, we'll talk more about what this means, but do you think Jerry Dipoto is gone if the Mariners miss the playoffs? Because this is a move that really makes me think that he is afraid of his losing his job, which before I didn't know if he necessarily thought that.
Oh yes. I mean, maybe if the Mariners go like 22 and 13 to close the season and they miss the playoffs by one game, but it's like, yeah, they were right there and clearly Scott was the problem. That's the only chance that Jerry has at keeping his job right now. If the Mariners don't really turn things around, he's a goner. He's a goner.
Yeah, I think I was leaning he wasn't gonna go, but with this move, I think he was. Honestly, Levi, I think this was a move that maybe needed to be done, but I was still shocked by it. I was checking in at the airport and I saw that Scott Service got fired on my phone. And as the guy is weighing my bag, I'm 2 pounds over. I'm like, oh my God, Scott Service is fired. This guy's talking to me. I don't know what's happening. My mind's going a million different directions. It is absolutely crazy the world we're living in right now, where Scott Service 2 years ago leads the Mariners to their first playoff appearance in 20 years. And now, just a couple years later, not even at the end of the season, the Mariners move on from him. It kind of shows you just how quickly things change. But the Mariners, you're right. You got 30 some odd games left. Dan Wilson, what do you think of the hiring? Kind of a interesting option. A lot of other guys you could have brought in, but Dan Wilson, the ex-catcher.
Yeah, and they bring in a guy who has a lot of experience on teams that have had to pull off incredible winning streaks. I mean, he was on that 95 team. That was, I believe, they were 13 games back. At one point, they were 12 back going into September, and they won that division. So maybe he can provide the spark that they need. But something's got to change because from June 18th until now, the Mariners have been a terrible baseball team. And Scott Service has not been able to inspire the team to win. And he used to do really well at that. So I don't know what went wrong there, but now is the time to see, can Dan Wilson do what Scott Service could not do?
And I don't think so, Levi. Look, I think this is quite
Wow.
literally a last-ditch effort to keep Jerry Dipoto's job from Jerry Dipoto. And I understand the reasoning behind it. If I was in Jerry Dipoto's shoes, I would do the exact same thing. The
Oh
problem
yeah.
is, the problem is that Dan Wilson and Scott Service, Drew Albaugh, Levi Cooper, whoever is the manager of this baseball team, it's not going to change the fact that Julio can't hit a fastball right now. So, like, what do you
That's
really
true.
want the team to do? There's only so much a head coach can do. I've said it once, I'll say it again. I don't think
Yeah.
a head coach in baseball has as much sway as in football, as in basketball, something like that. I think the Mariners offensively still need to figure this out on their own. It's up to the players. Scott Service, kind of a scapegoat in that eyes, hasn't been great. There's been some bullpen mismanaging, and really something we haven't talked about, Levi. The bullpen has been kind of a problem over the last couple of weeks. You win
Yeah.
two, maybe even 3 games of the last 8 losses if the bullpen just does what they needs to do in the seventh, eighth, and ninth inning. So that's kind of Scott Service's bread and butter. So maybe that was the deciding factor. Maybe it was Dan Wilson winning, the division in '95 and being able to kind of like, look, guys, I've done this before. We can do this again. I'm not quite sure, but either way, I don't know how much is actually going to change.
Yeah. I mean, you're right, Drew. As much as Dan Wilson might be able to inspire the team, he can get them hyped up, but it is ultimately on the hitters. They need to make more contact. They need to hit for more power. They need to hit for more clutch with runners on base. And if they can't do that, then no matter who's managing this team, you're right. They're not going to be able to pull off a great winning streak.
I said Dan Wilson, I don't think will be able to inspire this team in a way that will meaningfully impact the 2024 season. Do you agree with that, Levi? Or do you think, no, Dan Wilson might be able to pull this off or at least do better than what Scott Service would have done? Because I quite frankly don't think there's going to be a difference. I really don't.
I think anything's possible. But I would kind of agree. I think change is necessary. I was in the camp that you should fire him in the off season. And then I had some reactionary takes that said fire him after tonight's game. But I really don't. I really don't think most of the time you fire a coach mid-season, things don't usually change. But you can also point to the 2022 Phillies. They fired their coach in May. Granted, it was May, not August. And then they went to the World Series with their interim head
True.
coach. So anything is possible. But I do think, throwing in a new coach with 36 games to go and saying we need to win 24 out of 36 or something like that if we want to make the playoffs, that is a really tall order. And you're right. I mean, the chances that Dan Wilson comes in, we might be a little bit better than we've been. We might be a little bit worse. I guess we'll have to find out.
Let's say Dan Wilson leads the team to the playoffs or comes kind of close. Do you think Dan Wilson's the coach for the Mariners in 2025?
Yeah. If the Mariners play good baseball down the stretch, if they let's say they finish two back or they finish one back or they make it, then I think he's going to be the coach. Yeah.
Yeah, I think you
Now,
have
if the Mariners continue to lose and they fall below 500, then it's probably a 1.5 month thing, and then somebody else comes in.
Yeah, I mean, he's an interim head coach for a reason. I don't know how much
Yeah,
Dan Wilson wants to be the long-term answer for the Mariners. Maybe he does, maybe he doesn't. I'm not quite sure. If he makes the playoffs, I'm sure he'll be given that option at the very least. And if you make the playoffs, now all of a sudden the vibe completely shifts. You have a completely different head coach. You got
yeah.
the best pitchers in baseball. You assume that if you make the playoffs, the Mariners offense turned it around. So we'll have to see what happens, but this is definitely shocking news, Levi. Scale of 1 to 10, how surprised were you when you figured this out?
I've been hearing some rumors. I would say this, Drew. I was a 9 level surprised 2 days ago when I saw the Depoto interview when he said that it was on the
Start thinking
table.
about it. Yeah, yeah.
So because of that interview, once I knew he was thinking about it, then I kind of realized, okay, it's gonna happen. Um, so
I thought it was going to
yeah,
happen after this. I would have been too surprised if the Mariners fired Scott Service at the end of the season. It wasn't that Scott Service was
yeah,
getting fired; it was the timing of it. Not expected
yeah,
right. I really don't think that, especially after just a week ago, the Mets after that Mets sweep. The Mariners. I mean, the Mariners were in the division lead for like 100 something games this year. Scott Service is
yeah.
fired. Kind of crazy. That's about
It
all the
it
time
goes
we
to show
have
how
left.
quickly life can change. Yeah,
Yes,
Drew's got a flight to catch, guys.
I do.
Everything happens when we're at the airport. Kelly got traded when I was at the airport. Drew is at the airport now. So everyone wish Drew a safe flight. I will be back tonight, probably with Drew as well for more of a long-term breakdown. And we'll see you guys in the next one.
All right, thanks, guys. See you. And as always, go Mariners.